Now, in terms of the bigger picture, let's talk about that, because that to me is the more interesting stuff, right? Like, the one thing that we do well on this show, I believe, is we contextualize everything that happens. Yes, I just spent 5-6 minutes talking about the game itself, what went wrong, what went right. That's kind of boring. Anybody can do that. And so now it's time to talk about the bigger picture. And we'll get to Michigan State in a second, because Mel Tucker deserves a heap of praise. We deserve to throw roses at his feet. He deserves a massive salary increase, whether it's from Michigan State, from LSU, from somebody else. And Kenneth Walker deserves all the credit as well. But as I often say, the more interesting storyline is in the losing locker room. And I don't think there's a more interesting story right now in college football than Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. Because we're going to break down the stats in a minute. We're going to break it all down. But at the end of the day, this just reaffirms something that I have been talking about on this show for years. And it came to fruition once again yesterday afternoon, Saturday afternoon in East Lansing, Michigan. I like Jim Harbaugh. I've defended Jim Harbaugh. I think he elevated this program to a level that it was not at before he got there, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. But what is indisputable at this point with Jim Harbaugh is that this program will always be good under Jim Harbaugh. It will never be elite under Jim Harbaugh. And that is the most frustrating thing that a fan base can deal with, and it is going to lead to some very tough questions over these next couple weeks and months as it pertains to Michigan football. First of all, there are the facts. There are the stats. They are indisputable. Michigan is now, under Jim Harbaugh, check this out. They are now 2-13 against top 10 teams under Jim Harbaugh. So the narrative changes a little bit when he takes a massive pay cut this year. But at the end of the day, let's never forget, he was brought into Michigan to beat Ohio State, to win the Big Ten, to go to college football playoffs. And not only has he not done that, he can't beat the elite teams. 2-13 overall against top 10 teams. On top of that, he is now 3-9 against Michigan State and Ohio State, his two biggest rivals in college football at Michigan. If you do nothing else as the Michigan State coach, you got to beat little brother Michigan State. He's now 3-4 against them. You at least have to compete and every once in a while beat Ohio State. He is now 0-5 against them and would have been 0-6 had they played last year. Remember, that game was not played. Look at the schedule this year. What is going to happen? The same exact thing that has happened at Michigan every single year under Jim Harbaugh. They're going to be really good at the end of the year. They're going to have a nice record. I suspect that they will probably finish with at least 9 regular season wins, maybe 10 if they win at Penn State. But they didn't beat Michigan State. They didn't beat Ohio State. They're not going to beat Ohio State, the two best teams on their schedule, their two biggest rivals, and we are going to once again have the most unfulfilling ending to a Jim Harbaugh season ever, where he finishes 10-2 and beats nobody of consequence. And so because of that, it puts Michigan in the most precarious situation possible when it comes to being a major college football program. And let me step away. Let me talk very briefly about another sport. But in the NBA, we always say, you either want to be really good or really bad. You want to be really good, have that Kevin Durant, LeBron James, whatever type superstar, or you want to be really bad so you can hope to draft that kind of player in the NBA draft and develop them. Where you don't want to be is 40-42 or 42-40 in an 82-game regular season, and be the 7th seed in the playoffs and get steamrolled by LeBron. It is the most unfulfilling, unsatisfying thing possible, and Michigan has essentially become that under Jim Harbaugh, okay? Let me take you through it. I share these stats all the time, but they always are worth considering when it comes to Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is now in year 7 at Michigan, okay? Let's go ahead and take out the COVID year last year because COVID was just a bizarre deal. Nobody can really – it was just insane. It was just very weird. It was very strange. Let's take out the COVID year. Here is Jim Harbaugh's record at Michigan as the head coach of Michigan. 10-3 in his first year. 10-3 in his second year. 8-5 in his third year. 10-3 in his fourth year. 9-4 in his fifth year. Last year was COVID. He is 7-1 this year. Is probably at worst going to finish 9-3. I think he will get to 10-2 and beat Penn State. So we are now looking at year 7, take out COVID, so 6 seasons. He will have 4 10-win seasons, 5 9-win seasons, and 5 9-win seasons and 6 8-win seasons. You can argue a lot of things. What you cannot argue is that Jim Harbaugh is having success at Michigan that almost any other program in college football would trade. You take what he has done from 2015 to 2021, ask yourself, would Texas trade what Jim Harbaugh has done for what they have done over that stretch? They would. Would Florida State, who has had about 5 billion coaches over that stretch, trade what Jim Harbaugh has done over that stretch? Yes, they would. Would, I don't know, USC, I know they would. Would Oklahoma State, I mean, you go on and on and on down the list. Would, I can't even think of teams off the top of my head, but you start to think about the teams that would trade what Jim Harbaugh has done from 2015 to 2021. There are a lot of them, and what is also fascinating to think about is that it's easy to say Michigan is this great historical program. They were a complete dumpster fire before he got there. Here is the record of in the 7 seasons prior to Harbaugh getting there. They are now, of course, in year 7. This was the Rich Rod era: 3-9, 5-7, 7-6. Brady Hoke, 11-2, 8-5, 7-6, 5-7. So Jim Harbaugh has now been there 7 years. Okay, let's assume he gets to 10 wins this year. That will be 4 10-win seasons for Jim Harbaugh in 7 years, and that includes a COVID year, by the way, that was a disaster. The previous 7 years before Jim Harbaugh got there, they won 10 games one time. The previous 7 years before Jim Harbaugh got there, they won 8 games twice in 7 years. Jim Harbaugh will have done it 6 in 7 years. And so why this is so interesting is because I don't know what you do if you're a Michigan fan. On the one hand, you never want to lose to your rivals. In any sport, it doesn't matter. I'm a UConn basketball fan. I don't care what the circumstance is. When we used to play, you don't want to lose to Syracuse. You don't want to be embarrassed by Syracuse. I don't care if we go 5. If we beat Syracuse and punk them at the Dome, that's all that matters. And I know you guys are fans yourselves, and I know you guys feel the same way. Auburn fans, yeah, you want to go 11-1 and make the playoff. But if we beat Bama, we're feeling awfully good going into the offseason. Kentucky fans, historic year we're in the middle of. I know it was a tough loss to Mississippi State. Can still get to 10-2. Can't lose to Louisville. Cannot lose to Louisville. That was when John Calipari last year in basketball. I know I'm going from football to basketball now, but that was when John Calipari, that was when he really started. You can lose a lot of games. You can't lose to Louisville. And so if you're Michigan, yeah, you're frustrated because the games that matter, Harbaugh just can't win. But at the same time, are you really going to fire a coach? Are you really going to force a coach out that is winning 10 games every single season? Because I'll tell you this, we talk a lot of coaching carousel on this show. I don't think there is an obvious great replacement for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. I don't think there's an obvious great replacement that the second that you get rid of Jim Harbaugh is a coach that will immediately take the job, and from there not only immediately take the job, but immediately get Michigan to where Ohio State is right now. Immediately get Michigan into college football playoff contention year in and year out. I'm just telling you, I don't think that candidate exists. Listen, let's go through the candidates really quick. Logical people for Michigan, okay? Let's take out Urban Meyer. Let's take out, James Franklin, who's obviously a hot candidate at other places. James Franklin's not leaving Penn State for Michigan. Think about it. First of all, I don't think Luke Fickell's coming. I know I do think eventually he will leave Cincinnati, but I think he's holding out for 1, 2, maybe 3 jobs: Ohio State, Notre Dame, maybe Penn State. And I also think just his Ohio State roots, I don't think he's going to take the Michigan job. Now, I know he wants a big job specifically in the Midwest, and that is the job that he will leave Cincinnati for. I don't know if Michigan is it. Bob Stoops ain't coming back to college to coach at Michigan. Because if Bob Stoops wants to come back, he could probably get LSU. He could probably get USC. Same with Chris Peterson. So then you start getting through the elite coaches that are going to make a difference. Matt Campbell, by the way, would have been a great hire last year. He's going to be 7-5 with the best team he's ever going to have at Iowa State. Is that the guy that's going to rally the fan base and, more importantly, build a program that can beat Ohio State? Because he can't even build a program that can beat Oklahoma State right now. And so it is such a precarious situation, and it is so interesting at Michigan. Because on the one hand, you have seen in recent history what happens. First of all, let me even backtrack. On the one hand, you could sit there and say, we haven't beaten Ohio State. We can't beat Michigan State. We got to get rid of this guy. And if that is your argument, I cannot really argue it. I cannot really fight you on that. But what I would also say is Michigan also in recent history knows exactly what it's like to have a very, very, very successful coach and to think it's only going to get better when you fire him, and then you had a decade of misery. You had 7 years of Rich Rod, Brady Hoke, bleh, before Jim Harbaugh came in and started winning 10 games a year. On the other hand, a lot of people say, well, that's a losing mentality. So you're accepting second place from now until the end of time. It's not that I'm accepting second place. What I am saying, though, is there are a lot of programs, and we know who they are. You get rid of a coach, you force a coach out, you're happy when a coach leaves, assuming that the next guy is going to be better. When Phil Fulmer left Tennessee, what's Tennessee been like since then? When Mac Brown left Texas, what has Texas been like since then? Heck, I'll take it a step further. Bo Pelini at Nebraska, you go back and look at the record, really wasn't that bad. Lloyd Carr at Michigan wasn't that bad. And so Michigan has a recent track record, and people say, that's a losing mentality, so you're just going to take second place forever. I'm just telling you, the bottom line is it could be better than Harbaugh, but there are a lot of guys that can be a lot worse, and we have seen it in the not-too-distant past. And so because of it, I don't know what the answer is because I don't believe there's a great candidate, and I don't know what you do next. Do you keep the coach that consistently wins 10 games, that consistently beats the teams that they're supposed to, that consistently, at the very least, doesn't embarrass you against Rutgers and Maryland and Northwestern and Minnesota and Purdue, but can't beat Ohio State and Michigan State? Or do you find a way to get them out the side door and get somebody else to bring in? And I would say this, too, with Harbaugh. Last little thought, we'll talk a little Mel Tucker, a little Kenneth Walker. We are now at the point with Harbaugh where, like it's indisputable. And I know I talked about it, year 7, all that stuff. But it's starting to feel a little Coach O-ish, where Coach O, if you remember, when he got fired, what was the conversation? Won the national championship, changed coordinators multiple times, had multiple quarterbacks, had multiple this, had multiple that. And at a certain point, there's only so many fingers you can point. Well, Jim Harbaugh's shaken up his staff 2-3 times now. He's got the young staff in. I know we're reacting to one loss, but I don't know what to do because this does not look like a team that, based on what we just saw, is going to be ready to beat Ohio State. And Ohio State didn't even look that great on Saturday night against Penn State. But you don't beat Ohio State. Like where are we at the end of this year with Michigan? It is just absolutely fascinating. They got to rally. They got to get ready. They play Indiana this weekend. That should, in theory, be a win. I would hope it'd be a win. And maybe you win and you get back on track and everybody starts to feel good about themselves again. But I am just telling you, you finish 10-2. You beat a barely top 25 Penn State team that's going to finish 7-5. And nobody else of consequence. I just don't know what Michigan does because I don't think that there is a better obvious candidate. And one last thought. I swear, I keep saying last thought. But, oh, by the way, do you really want to enter a coaching cycle where both USC and LSU are looking for coaches as well? Just keep an eye on this, man. This is just a fascinating, fascinating story in college football. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram.